Hello and welcome to A Day in the Life. I'm your host, Darren Bloomfield. Joining me today is another Darren, Darren Hickey. Hello, Darren. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Good to be there. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you're a sports and entertainment expert, so very interesting, like niche field, working for a retailer there, Hub. Can you kind of talk about how you got in such like a niche area and just kind of that path?
Sure. I started doing motorsports a little over 20 years ago. Grew up being a big motorsports fan, and a former colleague actually was working for a team, and he reached out to me and we reconnected, and he said, "You want to come see our race shop?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So went there, saw it. Never been inside an IndyCar shop in my life. Walked me through everything. Like, this is great. We went to lunch afterwards, and he said, "Have you ever thought about doing motorsports insurance?" And my answer was no. And he said, "If you want to learn, I can give you like the 30,000-foot view of what we need." And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he walked me through it over the next hour or so. And I went back to the office and I thought, I think I can do this. So started to find markets, try to understand the space. Had decent success for a couple of years. Kind of felt more like a hobby. And I decided, okay, for the next year, I'm really going to focus on this, really going to concentrate on working in this industry. And it's going to be kind of sink or swim. Either I'm going to, have success, or I'm going to stop and go do something else. And, very humble, had pretty good success. And so it just kept building off of that. And now 20 some years later, still trying to build, still trying to grow, still learning every day about the space. It's evolved massively in the last 20 years. It's evolved massively in the last 24 months. So what I love about not only the field of risk management insurance, but also in the sports and entertainment space, and particularly motorsports, is you never stop learning. The job never gets stale. The environment never gets stale. There's always something to learn, always something new, evolving technologies, evolving risks, evolving exposures that keeps it fresh and new. So I always say I have the best insurance job in the world, and I've always felt that way.
Yeah, so definitely a couple things to cover there. Just kind of like that first introduction to insurance, to motorsports, like how valuable that is, kind of like a mentor, someone willing to kind of like talk about, hey, like this is what I do. Would you be interested in this? And just kind of like bridging that gap of understanding. Like, I think that's very valuable. And then even within that, like now you have people who are majoring in risk management insurance. So you're coming out of school and you're like, I want to work in insurance. And then you're like, and then it's kind of the question of like, what line of business do I want to do? But then there's also kind of that other group of people that maybe like you said, are like really interested in something like a hobby of theirs. It's like very niche. It's like, oh, I'm interested in motorsports. And it's like, oh, what can I do with motorsports? And it's like, oh, I can do insurance in motorsports. Like, I think that's kind of like an interesting distinction to kind of make.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in times where I've talked to college students that were in risk management programs or had an interest in it, what I always say to them is, look, everything that you see has an insurance component, right? Every movie that you see ever made is insured. Concert tours, everything, sports teams. So, the great thing is, if you have a really strong passion for something and you can merge it into insurance, you really feel like you never work a day in your life. And it doesn't mean you have to be a broker. You could be in risk services. You could be in underwriting. There's all these different areas that you could work in and still have that component about something you're passionate about, which I think is really neat. The other part of it is that, most people, when they're first coming out of risk management school or, getting a degree in risk management, they don't, the ones that I've met and talked to, they don't really think about that. It's like, they're thinking more traditional lines where it's like, no, 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 broaden your view. I mean, you can, you know, it could be marine, it could be aviation, right? I mean, you know, I used to work with a colleague of mine that grew up in the Northeast, and he was a big skier, and he merged his passion for skiing into being the premier ski resort insurance broker in the country, which again is really cool. And he understood that business really well because he grew up in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting too. Is just kind of like for example, if you like you're able to go to like the Indy 500, you're able to travel, and then like it's also like where you're going for work. Like it's not just like the desk job, sitting at desk, emails and phone calls. Like you're actually out, kind of traveling, seeing things that you would already be like interested in seeing, but then also like the people that you get to like interact with. Like you're interacting with people who like know the lingo, know what's going on, have similar interests to like what you're interested in, and then like just kind of like that's like you can make friends kind of with that, and then like maybe people you worked with become kind of like friends, and I think that's like pretty unique too.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's I sit back. I have moments probably more often than I think where I've had a conversation with somebody where we've helped on a project or we've got a new client, and they're a legend in the sport, or they're a very important person in the sport right now that's shaking up the sport, making things happen, and you have that like pinch me moment where it's like, okay, I just helped so and so put something together, and you're like, wow, this is really cool. And motorsports, I think, is no different there than any other, major league sport, entertainment, whatever. To do it and be very successful on the business side of it, you have to be in it full time, 24/7, because you have to understand what's going on in the space. And if you're not there, if you're not fully committed to it, you really can't understand that. And a big part of that is traveling to events, again, to be able to see what's going on, what's taking place. And the fact that you're in one, I call it a confined space, right? Yeah, it's a big speedway, a big road course or whatever, but your world is there. And to be able in 2 or 3 days to connect with all the people within the sport in this not so small space, but you know where they are, is invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable. It also shows that by being there, they say half success in life is showing up. So, that's part of it. You're there, they see you. It doesn't mean, they're going to turn around and become a client today, tomorrow, 6 months from now. But at some point over the years, I've gotten a call, an email, a text from somebody that says, hey, I know we've talked in the past about this, that, or whatever. I've got this idea, I've got this opportunity, I've got this concern that I have. Can we grab a call and talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like being present in the community, kind of being like available to kind of have those discussions, because even I would think like in motorsports, like already kind of a close knit group, but then like even people within in that community might not even know about like what your job is, like working in insurance, or like how do you kind of talk about like what you do with like people that are actually like knowledgeable about the sport, but then also might not like even think about like the insurance side of it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I tell people who don't know what I do is I first of all say it's not just me. I've got this, Hub's a 14,000 employee company. We're the largest insurance broker for sports and entertainment risk in North America by far. There's 4 different areas that we can help people: their business insurance, employee benefits, personal insurance, and retirement and 401k planning. So, our client view across the spectrum in motorsports is very, very broad. and at times almost feel like a business development person where I'll be talking to somebody and it's like, okay, where's your pain? What concerns do you have? Well, we've got this issue going on. Okay, we can help with that. So you got to keep a very open mind of how you can help people. And it's typically once we solve one problem or provide a really good solution, other opportunities open up.
Yeah, because I think to a certain extent, like some people might be a little like skeptical about like insurance or how like, oh, like I'm paying, this premium. What does it get me? And I'm like, oh, I heard someone else that had this claim and they didn't get paid. Like, why would I buy insurance? Or like, I think there's kind of like that stigma against insurance, and even like people who like work in insurance, like one negative experience just tends to like kind of linger. Like, how do you kind of like you said, like you kind of have to like get in and kind of like build those positive experiences, and then you kind of get more trust, and then that leads to like more opportunities. How does that take a long time, or is it kind of client by client, or how does that kind of happen?
You bring up good points. Yeah, it definitely takes time. I mean, I've seen it in motorsports so often where people, not just in my field, but in other fields, come into the space, stay a little bit of period of time, and leave. So one is you're there for 2 decades. You've built a reputation that you deliver on promises, you do what you say you're going to do, and the best thing that can ever happen in my world is referrals. And it happens sometimes on a daily basis where, again, I'm getting a phone call, an email, or a text where somebody says, I understand you take care of, company X or Joe Smith. We've got this situation going on. We've got a concern. Can we set up a meeting? Can we grab a call and talk about it? And that to me is just this massive vote of confidence that another client is telling somebody, Hub International and Darren can be of service to.
Yeah, I think like that kind of comes down to like people would say like there's like this saying like, oh, insurance isn't like sexy, and like you don't really get much credit for saying like, oh, hey, what do you do? Like, oh, I work in insurance, and the conversation just kind of like maybe fades away a little bit. But like what you're saying, just being like that trust advisor, like it's kind of like those three pillars of legal, accounting, and then also like insurance, kind of like equal importance, kind of like advising like the business leaders, like and like, but like sometimes that message is like missed. Like how, like have you been in a room with an accountant and a lawyer like advising a client, or how does that kind of work?
Weekly. Yeah, I mean, I probably talk to more attorneys and CPAs than I do anybody else, you know? Um, and that's, it's a three-legged stool that's imperative for pro athletes and companies. I think you got to have really good CPA team behind you, really good legal team behind you, and really good insurance broker. And it's imperative that all three of those folks know each other, get along well, work well together. I was on 3 calls and probably a dozen emails last evening, between attorney, CPA, business advisor, race car driver, 2 team owners, working on 3 or 4 items to make sure they were smoothed out, everything was in place, so they could finalize a contract and make an announcement forthcoming. And we got everything done that we needed to do. So I felt really good that our piece was one last thing they needed to worry about. They still had a couple loose ends to tie up, but from our standpoint, we were good and they were good to go. So yeah, I mean, and because you work in it so far and people know that you understand it, you're waist deep in it every day, you feel good that people have the confidence in you to say, hey, you're an important part of this, of what we're trying to put together, and to be able to make sure that they've got that confidence they can push forward.
Yeah. I mean, and that's when I just kind of think about sometimes is like the lifestyle involved, or like because you see, I mean, I've seen people who go to law school, work as an attorney for a couple years, and then come into the insurance industry, might go to like the carrier side and like underwrite lawyers, or like they write, insurance contracts, and they just write like the contracts for the carriers. You see people who have CPAs that come into insurance and then go maybe on the financial line side, analyzing financial statements and such, or insuring accountants for errors and omissions. But then, like, I haven't really heard of too many people like in insurance and then like going to legal side or going to like the accounting side.
No, no, I haven't. But it's the same vein, if you would, with accountants and attorneys that we work with on a routine basis, that are involved in sports and entertainment. And, they took a different path, if you would, but it's also a very similar path to what I did, where they've been able to morph a passion for sports and entertainment with their profession, right? And they're working on things that are very complex, but also kind of outside the lines versus just kind of standard legal work or standard CPA work.
Mhm. And that's something that's I think is very attractive, just kind of that variety. Like I'm sure with you, like, every day you're kind of in the morning, maybe the morning routine, and you're opening your computer, checking emails, and you're checking your phone, and then it's like, what am I going to do today? And sometimes you might not really know until maybe a claim comes in, or maybe you have this new insured that you can prospect, and then this new business opportunity, or maybe if you go travel somewhere, like just kind of such like a variety, and just kind of like each day at work is kind of different, which I think is really attractive to a lot of people.
Yeah, no, like I said, no 2 days are the same. It's not even close. Uh, Particularly when we're on the road, you get back. My phone is never off, ever, ever, because we have clients all over the country. So, it's 5, 6 o'clock here, and it's 2, 3 o'clock in LA. And so, I may have some of my business managers out there reaching out to me, at 7, 8 o'clock at night, with questions, or, hey, you got time for a quick call? Something came up today. So, I gave up 8 to 5 Monday through Friday a long time ago. That doesn't exist in my world.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
what would you kind of say is like, like you've talked a little about like the traveling aspects and being able to like really do something you're passionate about, but then like there's also like bad days, I'm sure of, maybe like, oh, a claim comes in, or you have to work the care to like resolve the claim. Can you talk about, maybe a bad day?
I don't get too worried about stuff breaking. Um, Not that it's not important, but we can put it back together. Bad days are when we have somebody get hurt. Um, and, through my 20 some years, we've had drivers get hurt. We've had drivers unfortunately get killed. Those are bad days. Okay. Those are calls you never want to get. Uh, I've been to 3 racetracks and seen drivers get killed. Those are bad days. It helps put things in perspective when you have a bad, you think you're having a bad day or something's gone wrong. And, you go back and you think about those days and you go, this isn't that bad. We'll get through this. Right. But to answer your question, those are my bad days.
Mhm. So can you talk about like you spent a lot of your career on like the retailer side, early on, did
Yep.
you think about going to like the carrier side, or going to, I don't know, like wholesale brokerage, or what's kind of kept you like on the retailer side, on the front line?
It's a great question. Probably the face-to-face meetings with the end user, the client. Um, I love, there's nothing better than being in meetings with clients and face to face, discussing needs, providing solutions, doing what we do, there's nothing better than that. And that's why I've always stayed on the retail side. I work with some great people that are on the wholesale side or run programs, and they really, they're working with us, and then we're going to the client, and they love doing that. So I think a big part of our world is finding out where you fit best. And I've always been client facing. That's what I love. But I did a call today with one of our broker partners, and they have done face to face, but their whole world has been working with brokers, and they're excellent at it. I don't think I'd be very good at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So can you talk about, I mean, like you kind of explained like your introduction to like this area of like you're fortunate enough to have someone kind of show you like business and kind of bring you along and like kind of help build your confidence, but also like that credibility element of like being in a room with kind of that mentor and then meeting some clients, and then that maybe the insured's like associate, oh, like Darren's, learning from this person. So like Darren's credibility is, it's so weird to say my name.
Yeah.
This credibility is kind of boosted, but like for a recent college grad to kind of enter like this retailer space and being like very like niche, like sports entertainment is, like I think it would be very hard to like build that network and have that like confidence and credibility. Like even for me, like multiple internship experience, like I have a network of like insurance people,
Right.
brokers and underwriters, but like I don't really know any business owners. I don't know, I maybe know like three, risk managers, but like I think that's something that's very hard to do. And then maybe that's keeping some people from wanting to go start their careers like in the retailer side of the industry.
Yeah, I think the best approach, honestly, is if you can find a really good broker that's got an opportunity for a young person to want to come in and learn the business, where they come in, work under that broker, where they're not really concerned about having to go out right away and find their own clients and learn the business from the ground up from that side. I think that's the way to go. Couple of the big wealth management companies that we work with, they have several, it's kind of like the broker manager partner is, the person out there with all the relationships, and he or she is in charge of bringing in new clients. And then you have these younger brokers, obviously they don't have the network that the managing partner does, but they're learning how to put together portfolios and how to network by, really being mentored. Because there's no better teacher than experience. And if you can work under somebody that wants to mentor you, because I think it's incumbent upon us in our industry, and I say this about all financial services industry, nobody got to where they are on their own. All of us have had somebody that's helped us along the way. So I think it's incumbent upon us to turn around and help people up the ladder, up the steps. I think it's what you should do. So that would be my advice to a young person, is find somebody that's in the area you want to be in and see if they're looking to take on a protege or somebody that, like an understudy, that can learn from them, the good and the bad, because we all make mistakes, right? Nobody perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to put it, is there's no better teacher than experience. But then even like within that, working under a broker, like you said, you have to find, someone who has that time and energy to want to like mentor. And then just side note, like the opportunity involved in that, if this person retires, in 10 years, then you kind of have that book of business there. But then
Right.
like, when is it, more than just like servicing the accounts? Like, I think it's very important to get like kind of out and kind of
Yes.
like be a part of the conversations. But then, even now, I guess multi-part question of like now with like COVID, of like, is it, like that phrase of like learning by osmosis, of like kind of being in the room, how is that going to change in like a virtual environment, and like how do you kind of split that time being that producer mentoring kind of someone? How do you get them to learn the business, and then also, because like I don't expect anyone to throw this new hire out into the world or into like a room without knowing what a carrier is and what markets does which. Like I think like there's definitely a learning curve, but then you definitely have to kind of like balance that transition.
Yeah, it's a great question. Certainly, I think the financial services world is much further along as an industry, back to work, back out of the virtual world, probably more so than others. A lot of the people that I work with, CPAs, et cetera, they're back. They're back, and they've been back for a long time in offices. So, we're getting there. I think we're a lot closer to that finish line. I'm an optimist than some people would say. So, but it's certainly, you're right, it's provided big challenges. I've also felt that where I've witnessed firsthand in my world, there's very few people now that want to do virtual. They want you there. They've done the virtual, right? They've done all the Zoom calls when they had to. And we still do them, don't get me wrong, personally. Every time I need to do a meeting in LA, I'm not jumping on a plane. That doesn't make much sense, right? But it's, we're pretty much back in person, which obviously helps that mentorship, right? Where you have that person you can meet with on a regular basis, coach them, explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it makes sense. And I'm bullish on 22 from an economic standpoint. I think it's going to be a banner year, and the challenging part is finding the right people that really want to learn the business.
Yeah,
But again, part of that's on us as an industry to go out and seek out really bright young talent and tell them why they should be excited about insurance. Because it's one thing that's never going away, right? I mean, it just isn't. There are segments of the business that have been commoditized. You can't watch TV or log onto a website without, 17 ads from the mass marketing insurance carriers. They're trying to do everything online and da-da-da. We don't play in that world, okay? What I do is never going to be point and click online. Sophisticated risk management is sophisticated risk management. It's much like attorneys, right? I mean, attorneys are never going away because you're not going to be able to point and click and do contract review, right? And advice. It just isn't. Same thing with CPAs. But it's incumbent upon us to get young people excited about being in our world and understanding the growth in it, the stability in it, and why you should be in that business.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of great points of like we as an industry have to find that talent, but also like that passion, and kind of explain what the job is, what the perks are of, okay, recession proof, very secure. These jobs are not going to be like automated. They're not going away. And like, it's interesting stuff that what goes on, like it really changes the way you can like look at the world. But then I guess like a question to you is, someone who's starting their career, like very early on in their career, why would they want to go like straight into motorsports? Because like, so I think sometimes people have a little fear of getting like too specific, like too like focused right away. And then if you start in motorsports, like how do you go broad again? Versus like some people definitely have that passion and go straight in and stay there, like you said. But then there's some people who go straight in and then kind of have to like pivot.
No, it's a good point. I mean, it depends upon what avenue of insurance you're going to be working on, or what, whether it's going to be as a broker, underwriter, risk services, et cetera. I would tell you that most of the people that I know that work in a specialty area, they still have a group of clients in other areas. They're not 100% motorsports or 100% restaurants. So they still have what I call it some kind of standard middle market type clients. And I think that's the best approach. But I've found over my 20-some year career, the best brokers with the biggest book of businesses, that are most highly compensated, have a specialty area. They have something that is, 70 to 90% of their book of business. And it's a market segment, and they have developed themselves into being experts in that field, thought leaders in that field, and that's what's driven their practice. And it doesn't happen overnight. It could take years to end up in that place. But I think as somebody young coming into business on the retail agent side, if you develop a specialty, find something you're really attracted to, it can help massively push forward your career.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I never thought about that. It's kind of funny as you say, like having the specialist, and then having, it's like risk management. You're diversifying your clients and kind of having,
Yeah,
maybe a side specialty. I think it's like the major and a minor in your
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on the underwriting side, it's very similar, right? Because the amount of people that we work with all the carriers in motorsports, it's a very narrow amount of people that are underwriting motorsports. It's very few. And they're typically there for a long time because they've gotten into it, they've become very good at it, and they're very valuable to those carriers, because it's not like they can just hire somebody off the street tomorrow and say, hey, you're going to be a motorsports underwriter, because there's not a lot of people out there. So it significantly increases your value to the company you're working for.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman that I knew for a very long time, and he was a loss control consultant. And he worked for one carrier for a very, very, very long time. Great guy. And he gets to a certain age and he decides he's going to retire. So he does. Well, there's very few people doing this. So all the few carriers in the space knew he was retired, and they kept calling him and saying, hey, will you come work for us? We've got an event we need loss control at or services at. And he kept getting these calls, and he's like, okay. So he set up a little side business. And instead of working for one carrier, he was working for 4 or 5. And they would get in touch with him and say, hey, we've got this offshore power boat event taking place. Would you want to go? Well, when is it? Okay. And he told me, he said, for several years after he quote unquote retired, he was busier then than he was when he was working full time, because there was such a need. And I used to joke with him, I'm like, okay, when I retire, I want to be you. And it was great because it was generally end of the week, weekend work. And he went when he wanted, and when he didn't want to go, he didn't go.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, is like the skills, like just that technical like acumen that you would learn in insurance, regardless of like what side of the industry you're working on or what specialty. Like those skills don't just like go away, and that like they'll be valuable, like even in some place that you wouldn't think. Like some people in insurance could go, work in like private equity, or go work in like a different area, or like invest in insurance companies, or like I think like that knowledge is valuable like outside of insurance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that, because I have a good friend who's an attorney, and he did work in motorsports, but he worked for a great law firm for a number of years. And one of the companies that he did work for, and they've grown and expanded, gotten pretty big, got involved in sports and entertainment, and he had that background. And the other company called him up and said, I need in-house counsel. And he went, okay. So he thought he was going to ask him, like, who could you recommend? And he said, I want you to come on board, be my in-house counsel and risk manager. And it was like, really? And he never thought about this, right? He always thought he was going to be an attorney in a law firm the rest of his career. And so they had conversations, worked out the financial dealings, and he went, I'm going to do this. And, you know, he said, Darren, I never thought I would. I mean, I was really happy for him. He seems really, really genuinely happy with what he's doing. He's like, it's very different from working at a firm, but, you know, just never believed it. So my point is, just because you start somewhere, that's probably not where you're going to end up. And you just never know where you're going to end up, what opportunities are going to present themselves in front of you in the course of your career.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Just kind of like that, like career journey. Kind of said it better. Well, as we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to add?
You know, again, I spent my whole life in insurance. It's been really good to myself and my family. I've got a long run left. I'm excited every day to get up and get after it. I think I've got the best job in insurance. And, you know, for people out there that go, I'm not so sure about it, you know, there's a different side of insurance. And I think that's where we work on. That's really amazing. And, you know, again, if you want great career, working for great companies that's stable and secure, look this way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Honestly, your passion's really, really inspiring.
Anytime, my friend. Good name, by the way.